There. In the early hours of October 24th, 2017, the small town of Larkwood awoke under a heavy blanket of fog. Nestled between rolling hills and vast fields, the silent streets lay cloaked in an unsettling calm. The scene was picturesque, a postcard image of rural tranquility. But for the residents, a lingering tension hung in the air. Just a week prior, a teenage girl named Emma Turner had vanished without a trace on her way home from the local high school. Larkwood was not known for crime. It thrived on a sense of safety and community pride, where doors remained unlocked and neighbors looked out for one another. However, as search parties combed through woods and volunteers plastered flyers across every lamppost, whispers of unease rippled through the town. Emma's parents, frantic and desperate, implored anyone with information to come forward. With each day that passed, the hope of finding her faded, tainted by an oppressive sense of dread. Detectives Adam Simmons and Lily Hart arrived in Larkwood 2 days after Emma's disappearance. The case had crossed their desks in the homicide division, and while the murder was yet unconfirmed, the emotional weight of the investigation loomed heavily upon them. As they set up headquarters in a worn-down church repurposed as a community center, they understood that unraveling the threads of this small-town mystery would require more than just police work. It would demand a deep dive into the psyche of Larkwood's residents. The victim, Emma Turner, a bright and spirited 16-year-old, was more than a name on a missing persons poster. She was the heart of her community, known for her infectious laughter and unwavering kindness. Emma had dreams of becoming a veterinarian, drawn by her love for animals and nature. Described as a typical teenager, she enjoyed spending time with friends, attending local sports events, and exploring the countryside that cradled Larkwood. On the surface, Emma's life seemed idyllic, supported by a close-knit family and a network of caring friends. As Detectives Simmons and Hart began their investigation, they touched base with Emma's best friend, Casey, who recalled the last day they were together, a sun-soaked afternoon spent at the park. When asked about any concerning behavior leading up to her disappearance, Casey hesitated, her eyes casting downward as memories rushed back. She started acting a little different. She admitted softly, like she was worried about something. As investigators probed deeper into Emma's life, they uncovered subtle hints of change. Text messages revealed a growing distance with her boyfriend, a series of late-night phone calls with an unknown number, and a less frequent presence at the local hangout. While no one could pinpoint the precise nature of her worries, one detail stood out. Emma had confided in Casey about a confrontation she had with an older male student at school, a moment that had left her feeling uncomfortable and vulnerable. With these fragments of Emma's world, detectives began to lay the groundwork for their search. But with each discovery came the chilling realization that her life was woven with complexities far beyond what appeared on the surface. The crime scene. On the third day into their investigation, the sun broke through the dense fog that had enveloped Larkwood, illuminating a stretch of woods where Emma was last seen. It was here, amidst the towering trees and underbrush, that the detectives hoped to uncover crucial evidence. The area, once a commonplace for school outings and summer adventures, had morphed into a haunting reminder of Emma's disappearance, marked only by the rustle of leaves swaying in the light breeze. Detectives Simmons and Hart navigated the uneven terrain, guided by the meticulous sketches provided by volunteers who searched the woods. Their footsteps crunched against fallen twigs, a sound far too loud in the stillness of the forest. As they approached a clearing, a crime scene technician waved them over. Tension charged the air as they moved closer, the technician pointing to an area where the brush had been disturbed. "Footprints lead this way," he said, tracing an invisible line with his finger. "And we found some fabric caught on a branch." Simmons crouched down, inspecting the remnants of what appeared to be a torn piece of clothing, a pale blue that matched one of Emma's favorite shirts. It sent a chill down his spine. This was no longer an ordinary missing person case. It was rapidly taking on a darker tone. In that moment, the weight of responsibility hit both detectives. They were no longer just searching for a girl. They were standing at the precipice of something more sinister. Every detail had the potential to tell a story, but the truth remained elusive, buried within the earth and the memories of those who frequented these woods. The adrenaline surged as they prepared to dig deeper, aware that their next steps could lead them toward either resolution or despair. The early investigation. In the days following their grim discovery, Detective Simmons and Hart worked tirelessly to piece together the events surrounding Emma Turner's disappearance. With the community still in shock, they scheduled a series of interviews, beginning with her classmates and teachers. Each conversation, though often filled with uncertainty, painted a somewhat coherent picture of Emma's final days. One afternoon, they found themselves seated in a dimly lit classroom where Emma had spent countless hours. Ms. Henderson, Emma's favorite teacher, fidgeted with the hem of her cardigan as she recalled the last time she saw the girl. She seemed distracted, almost preoccupied, she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "I thought it was just teenage angst, you know. I had no idea anything was wrong." As they moved from teacher to teacher, a pattern began to emerge. A series of whispers echoed through the school corridors about a rivalry developing between Emma and another student, a junior named Tyler Graham. As the detectives probed deeper into this budding feud, they learned that Tyler, known for his volatile behavior, had a reputation for intimidation. At first, students remained hesitant to reveal too much, fearful of stirring up trouble. Yet Detective Hart's persistence paid off when a freshman named Jenna finally spoke up. Tyler said something about Emma getting what she deserved. He bragged about it, like it was a game. The words hung heavy in the room, thickening the atmosphere. Finally, as rumors began to coalesce around Tyler Graham as a potential person of interest, Simmons and Hart prepared to pay him a visit. The stakes had risen. Emma's case had transitioned from a missing persons inquiry to a complex investigation involving potential threats now, turning their search for answers into a race against time. The dead ends. As Detectives Simmons and Hart delved deeper into the investigation, their initial hope quickly faded into frustration. Though Tyler Graham had emerged as a person of interest, the evidence against him remained circumstantial. When they tracked him down at the local skate park, his demeanor was nonchalant, too casual for the gravity of the situation surrounding him. He dismissed the allegations, laughing off the idea that he could be involved. Yeah, I've had words with Emma. She's a pain sometimes, but I wouldn't hurt her." He smirked, tossing his skateboard in the air. The detectives exchanged wary glances. Doubt gnawed at them. While his bravado was unsettling, it didn't prove he was guilty. Their attempts to insinuate a deeper involvement met with practiced evasion. Back at the precinct, they reviewed recent footage from various surveillance cameras in the area, yet each recording presented another dead end. Emma had not been seen leaving school after the bell rang, nor had she crossed paths with Tyler that day. As his alibi was corroborated by friends, the deeper they plunged into the available evidence, the more elusive the truth became. Meanwhile, their inquiries into Emma's social media turned up few leads. Her online presence, typically active, had transformed into avoid her most recent posts, riddled with sentiments of uncertainty and loneliness. Had she confided in someone online, or was she trying to distance herself? The absence of solid threads to follow left them spinning in circles. As the days turned into weeks, despair began to creep into the hearts of the detective. They were caught between hope and hopelessness, realizing that finding Emma's truth was as complex as navigating the fog that initially shrouded Larkwood. Each question asked led to another without closure in sight. A break in the case. Weeks had slipped by since Emma's disappearance, and with each passing moment, the weight of the investigation threatened to crush the spirits of Detectives Simmons and Hart. Just as fatigue began to settle into their bones, a call from a local fisherman changed everything. He had spotted something strange while casting his lines in the shallow waters of Pine Lake, a picturesque spot nestled on the outskirts of town. Arriving at the lake just after sundown, Simmons and Hart surveyed the scene with a sense of urgency. The fisherman, an elderly man named Walt, led them to the edge of the water, where he pointed toward a cluster of reeds. "I'm telling you, there's something out there," he insisted, his voice trembling. As they waded into the shallows, each step felt charged. A palpable tension in the air. The search team quickly joined them, scouring the area with flashlights piercing through the murky darkness. After a few painstaking moments, their efforts bore fruit. A glint of fabric caught the lighter shirt, partially submerged, its pale blue color stark against the shadowy water. Cautiously, a wave of dread washed over them as the fabric matched the piece they found in the woods. As they sifted through the surrounding area, hopes were high yet accompanied by anxiety. Moments later, their cautious optimism came crashing down. What they stumbled upon next brought a chilling realization. A small charm bracelet lay glimmering in the mud, each charm painstakingly engraved with memories that belonged to Emma. Their hearts sank, the pieces of the puzzle becoming painfully clear. This was no longer just about finding Emma. It had transformed into an active crime scene. With fresh evidence in hand, the investigation shifted gears. Determined, Simmons and Hart set out to forge a new path in their search on that could finally unveil the darkness that had taken their beloved community hostage. The suspect, with a renewed sense of urgency, Detectives Simmons and Hart regrouped at the precinct, the atmosphere charged with a new clarity regarding their investigation. The discoveries at Pine Lake compelled them to dive deeper into Tyler Graham's life, especially as they continued to hear whispers from the community hinting at his increasingly erratic behavior in the weeks leading up to Emma's disappearance. That night, after reviewing witness statements and social media posts, they learned that Tyler had been absent from school on the day Emma went missing. A classmate mentioned seeing him post on social media that very evening, seemingly providing an alibi, but it was unclear what he had done during school hours, leaving a gap, prompting further scrutiny. Determined to chase the lead, Simmons and Hart decided to pay him another visit. They arrived unannounced at Tyler's house, a modest two-story structure on the fringe of town. The peeling paint and overgrown yard reflected the neglect that resonated through the family's atmosphere. Tyler's mother answered the door with a weary expression, and with a sense of foreboding, she led them to the living room where Tyler sat, eyes darting nervously. "Why are you here?" he asked, his voice tight. "Tyler, we need to talk about Emma Turner," Hart said, observing the way his fingers drummed anxiously against the couch. The tension in the room thickened as Simmons broached the subject of the charm bracelet and the fabric recovered from the lake. Tyler shifted uncomfortably, but steadfastly denied any involvement as they pressed him further, revealing inconsistencies in his alibi and detailing the findings from the lake. Panic flickered in his eyes. The detectives could sense that beneath his bravado lay fragments of fear of being revealed and fear of something darker yet unknown. Though they lacked definitive proof, their intuition told them they were closing in on the truth. A sense of urgency thrummed through Simmons and Hart as they formulated a plan to investigate Tyler's whereabouts on the day Emma disappeared, convinced that the path to uncovering what happened next was now inches away. The trial. Months passed since the discovery at Pine Lake, and Larkwood remained ensnared in silence. The emotional toll of Emma's disappearance weighed heavily on the community. But the tide began to shift when Tyler Graham was arrested and charged with her murder after new evidence led the detectives to a chilling confession from one of his acquaintances. With the case finally heading to trial, a tense atmosphere enveloped the town as the date approached. Inside the packed courthouse, journalists, family members, and residents filled the wooden benches, the air thick with anticipation. Detective Simmons and Hart stood at the back of the room, their expressions grave but resolute. Emma's parents were visibly shaken, whispered conversations shrouding their grief. The trial would determine not only Tyler's fate, but also the truth surrounding their daughter's tragic end. The prosecution began with a powerful opening statement, detailing the timeline of Emma's last hours and the evidence unearthed at Pine Lake. Heart-wrenching testimony from her friends painted a portrait of a girl who had felt isolated and threatened, ultimately leading to the chilling encounter with Tyler. As they presented the recovered bracelet and shirt, the impact was palpable. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom as the images of Emma's life flashed across the screens. However, the defense countered with fervor, challenging the credibility of the witnesses. They argued that there was no direct evidence tying Tyler to the crime, suggesting that the investigators may have coerced his acquaintances into testifying against. As the proceedings unfolded, doubt lingered, a dark cloud over the fragile threads of justice. Throughout the trial, the weight of the evidence seemed to shift like grains of sand. Simmons and Hart sat on the edge of their seats, their anticipation tempered by the bitter reminder that justice is never guaranteed. But through it all, they felt an enduring resolve Emma's story would be told. Her truth fought for, setting the tone for a community desperate for closure. The aftermath. The trial concluded on a sweltering August afternoon, and Larkwood erupted into murmurs of disbelief as the jury returned with a verdict of guilty. Tyler Graham was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison for the murder of Emma Turner. While many in the community felt a mixture of relief and sorrow, it was impossible to escape the haunting realization that a young life had been brutally stolen, and the turbulent ripples of that loss would echo through Larkwood forever. In the weeks following the trial, the town adjusted to an uneasy new normal. Memorials for Emma bloomed throughout the community. Digital candles lit in front of her former school, her favorite books laid out beneath the oak tree where she once played. These gestures became anchors for mourning, an expression of shared grief that reminded families of their vulnerabilities and the fragility of life. Detectives Simmons and Hart remained deeply affected by the case, grappling with the emotional scars left behind. As the dust settled, they found themselves frequently revisiting mementos of the investigation, the photographs, notes, and witness statements in an effort to ensure that Emma's life was neither forgotten nor overshadowed by her tragic end. But it wasn't merely the loss of Emma that lingered. The case had exposed the festering wounds in Larkwood, whispers of fear, shame, and distrust that had woven themselves into the fabric of the community. Some residents found solace in forming support groups to address their feelings, while others sought a way to channel their grief into action, promoting safety initiatives and encouraging open dialogues about mental health. As the seasons turned, the town slowly began to heal, a delicate balance between remembrance and hope. Yet, for Simmons and Hart, the gravity of the case remained a constant reminder of their duty as protectors. They poured themselves into the next cases they tackled, seeking justice for those whose stories remained untold, always carrying Emma's memory with them, driving them forward in a world where darkness occasionally loomed too close. Comfort. Reflection. In the months that followed Tyler Graham's sentencing, the town of Larkwood began to breathe again. The shadows that had loomed over its residents began to recede. Yet echoes of the past lingered in every whispered conversation and shared glance. Detective Adam Simmons often found himself reflecting on Emma's case, replaying the events in his mind, the initial search, the community's rallying cry for help, the painful revelations that followed. In quiet moments, Simmons would drive past the park where Emma had spent her afternoons, seeing her laughter and the children playing under the oak trees. Each smile and giggle was intertwined with the sorrow of what had transpired in their town. He understood that while justice had been served, the scars of tragedy would remain etched on the hearts of Emma's family and friends. At the precinct, he found solace among his colleagues, discussing their next steps in cases that reached out for attention. The impact of Emma's case had sparked a call for more resources for missing persons and youth safety. It was a small victory, a means for the community to transform grief into awareness, bridging Emma's legacy with tangible change for the future. As he mulled over the complexities of life, Simmons felt gratitude for the lessons learned amid the turmoil. Emma's voice would forever haunt the corridors of Larkwood, prompting every leader and citizen to listen better, to embrace compassion, and to fight for what was right.